Welcome to 52 Pickup, a podcast about the greatest comic you've never heard of. I am professional comic book expert Alex Jaffe, and with me to discuss this issue, as always, as ever, is, fun fact, the only person who internationally you are legally required to be nice to, Gita Jackson.
That is law. That is international law.
Yeah.
That's why I went to the UN, because they were saying that because become part of international law to be nice to Gita, and they wanted to be really nice to me.
How did that go? You did go to the UN.
I did go to the UN as a not a joke. It went really well. It was kind of amazing. I went to the UN to speak on a panel about radicalization and terrorism in video game spaces, and
wow.
It was really fascinating. I met a lot of really intelligent, interesting people. And the big thing was it was really nice for once to see world government leaders actually take some of the problems that I've been reporting on very seriously. It was a co-sponsored event between Morocco and Japan. And it was incredibly fascinating. And then I got to take a little tour around the UN building, and we snuck into General Assembly. And they kicked us out immediately, but I got a couple pictures in there, so that was pretty nice.
Did you tell them you have a show where we talk about how great ISIS is every week?
No, I wasn't. I didn't let them know that. I already felt like there was a guy from the State Department on there. Shout out, Paul. You were really nice to me. But
as required by law.
Yeah, there's a guy from the State Department there. It's a really big fan of our work, apparently.
Nice.
And asks us about aftermath stuff. He was a sweetie pie, but I've told him that I already felt like I was on a list just based on my political behaviors,
right.
Which is, I feel like I am. One of the reasons I suggested Havana as one of the honeymoon locations to David, he was like, I don't want to get put on a list. I had to be like, baby, I'm definitely already on a list somewhere.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm not.
Yeah, you've married a bullet point, David.
Yeah. I married one of the foremost. Yeah, and also David's clearly on a list. If we're going to be real,
sure.
He goes viral every day for being an anti-Zionist Jew. There's no way that the government has not taken knowledge of how many academic scholars in Zionism have followed him on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the only list I'm on is list of people who can tell you what jewel kryptonite does. But we all have our areas of expertise.
Listen, someday that will become vitally important knowledge for the future of our world.
Someone needs to guard it. It's like that Fahrenheit 451 bit where everyone at the end of the world has one thing they have to memorize. And for me, it's DC Comics minutia. It'll be important.
You'll be extremely valuable in the new world where all these comics have been burned, and you'll be and you won't be able to imagine it really, but just imagine the 2-page spread here.
Yeah, people will be like, who is Booster Gold again? Sit down, let me tell you a tale.
Let me tell you the tale of the world's most pathetic man.
Booster Gold not in this issue. Instead, we get a bunch of our less popular storylines all collected together in this one. But you know what? For the sum of its parts, pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like this is the issue when I was reading it, when it was coming out, where I was like, finally, the fucking space hero shit is going to get good. Which was a lie.
But you see it here.
Yeah, you see the potential more clearly than in any other issue that features the space heroes.
I think that's true.
Yeah. It is. You mentioned this to me when we were texting about this before we started recording, but this is very much a Grant Morrison issue.
Yeah.
And it feels Morrison-y in the way that the action is described and the way that events occur, the way that you're just dropped into the action and you have to sort of accept that something that is happening that's sort of outside of your sphere of knowledge and that you probably won't get a total explanation for what it is, which is something I've always liked about their writing. But also, they just couldn't pull this one off. They simply couldn't at the end of the day.
I think what makes this issue work is that it very much exists on the Morrison continuum in that every story they have told within DC, at least, has been part of one larger meta-narrative.
Yeah.
And a lot of the visual techniques we see here, a lot of the imagery and symbology is stuff that borrows from their Seven Soldiers and stuff that'll show up again in the multiversity.
Yes.
There's some Final Crisis here, really.
No, I mean, especially in the depicting an end of a world and a hive mind, essentially, which is what the idea of a singular human consciousness that operates across an entire planet. That is a huge thing that they get into in Final Crisis to middling success, I would say.
And a very visceral depiction of a hero who loses.
Yes. I do always love Morrison's thing of being able to sort of conjure up a hero and imply that there's a lot of history with them and make you feel like there is. But it is, as an issue of a comic book in absentia, just on its own, this is like an incredibly finely crafted comic. Yeah. It really, really is.
It comes together. They're all working.
It all works together. And it is an example of, I think, the things that Morrison is good at, which I don't think are things that 52 in general is seeking to explore.
Agreed. It's a different wavelength. You want to talk talent for a second?
Let's do it.
All right. We got Chris Batista back on pencils. He was previously on that JSA issue that we did a couple weeks ago. We're back on that multiple inker kick. Apparently still some kinks to work out with the Steve Wacker transfer. We got Dan Green, who inked Justice League of America and Tarzan in the 70s, but is probably best known for his work on Doctor Strange. We got Dave Makis, who started with Image and Wildstorm in the 90s and went on to work on JLA and Lobo and Our Man. And we got Rodney Ramos, who's been doing these inker chaos issues for the past couple weeks. But altogether, you don't really notice too many jarring seams. The inkers do a good job working together, distributing their work amongst these different storylines we visit, helping craft a unique visual identity for each story. The Infinity Inc. scenes don't look like the Space Hero scenes exactly, and that's kind of okay because they're in a completely different realm.
Yeah, I felt like especially the work on the Space Hero scenes and the stuff where that takes place on an alien planet that we've never seen before and will never see again, that is really stellar. Like, it's really great. They, again, like the thing that Morrison seeks to do is put you in the mindset of someone reading the middle issue of like a 100-issue run comic book, like when they're 12 years old and they don't have access to the internet, making you feel like this world has a bunch of backstory that it doesn't actually have. And that really, really works here. Like, there is a style of fashion and a level of technology that is consistent and feels like it's like been thought about for a long time by a lot of different people, when in fact it is just in existence for this issue.
All right. Let's talk about this cover. What video game series do you think of when you see this cover?
Wolfenstein.
Oh, for me, it's Resistance Fall of Man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, it gives Wolfenstein 2.
Yeah.
The one where they're in occupied France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it just, I know that's the White House back there, but it's the same sort of plateau framing that the Wolfenstein covers had been using. I've also been thinking about Wolfenstein a lot because the Indiana Jones game came out.
Sure.
And it won't be available on PS5 until the spring, and I have an Xbox. We haven't used it in a long time, and I don't want to deal with all that. You know what I mean?
I get it. Yeah. I don't know the last time I booted up my Switch.
Yeah, same.
Gee, I have one technically. But yeah, this is some typical like, okay, this is technically an alien world, but we're using a lot of human world imagery, which is something that comics have done since comics existed. And we got some scary looking aliens just goose stepping down the streets. It's very much drawing on that World War II sort of symbology of the fascists storming the Capitol.
It also does give Star Wars, right?
It does give Star Wars.
The big floating head and then smaller figures in the front. It's just a very good way to frame things. And it, even if you don't know what it's sort of referencing image-wise, you do get the feeling of this is a sweeping Hollywood epic.
Yeah,
because that's what all those posters look like.
When we spoke to Alex Sinclair, he talked to us about how J.G. Jones was specifically inspired by those Star Wars posters. So
yes.
Yeah, we see that with Captain Comet back here and these two Green Lanterns who we'll never see again. And these Borg cubes floating over them straight out of Seven Soldiers Zatanna.
You know, the That's also true. But the one comic I would write other than a Lois Lane comic, which you very, very much know about, I would love to just write about one-offs about different Green Lanterns that you'll never see again.
Oh, that Alan Moore shit.
Like that Alan Moore shit. Yeah. I love it when you see a Green Lantern and then you never see them again. I love that. I think it's so cool. Why don't people do that anymore?
I mean, I think we're going to get into a lot of how DC explores space in this issue. And we'll start with our first scene, which takes us back to arguably the very first Silver Age character before we had a term for the Silver Age, Captain Comet. What do you know about this guy in this red jumpsuit with a big comet on his chest?
Absolutely nothing. I'm relying on you, my dear friend.
All right. Captain Comet is a guy who was born 10,000 years early. In 1951, he was introduced as, like, in the future, everyone is going to have powers like Superman because we're going to evolve that way. But Captain Comet was born early. He is, and this is the first time this term was ever used in a comic, a mutant.
Wow.
Yeah. DC had mutants before Marvel, baby.
They had to very specifically say that he's a meta in this one.
In this one, they did, yes. But if you go back to those 50s comics, he's a mutant there. And right now, we're using him as sort of this cipher for this space angle that Grant Morrison and Keith Giffen are trying to build up because, you know, in the Morrison fashion, why not go back to the very beginning? Mm-hmm. If we're going to establish a new villain, which is what this issue is very much about, let's have her terrorize the first space hero, kind of like the way that Morrison blew up the original Seven Soldiers of Victory when they were starting Seven Soldiers. It's a tried and true mechanic for him, for them. But you know, it's fun to see Captain Comet just, I mean, he's been off the board for a long time because he's a very Silver Agey character who's hard to fit into modern stories. So showing him in this weird sector of space kind of gives you an idea of like, oh, I guess he's been out there saving alien worlds this whole time, doing the Buck Rogers, John Carter thing. Yeah.
Very Adam Strange, which is, of course,
exactly.
The other thing,
later iteration of the same concept, basically.
Exactly. And it's intentional, the riff here, because the space heroes also contain Adam Strange, but it is trying to give you like a fully contained space adventure, like the thing that the space heroes are trying to do in 52 unsuccessfully. But it's kind of funny reading it because I just keep thinking, this is what I wanted the space heroes arc to be more like, to have more things occurring and less sort of just wandering aimlessly.
It's very funny having this scene where like it feels like the battle. It feels very much like the London Blitz.
Yes.
With, like 1940s style British aliens running around as alien invaders.
They even have like their street lamps look like gaslights, which is very, very funny. And there is the one of the characters you meet in this milieu is someone named Infantryman Jod, who just has the same kind of helmet that the palace guards outside of the whatever they call it in the UK. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the UK, despite having dated a British person. Yeah. You know those helmets so that the guards outside the palace gates wear. I want to
say beefeaters.
Yes. You got it. We did it. Two minds, better than one. It is giving like a specific Victorian vibe. And like it's they're doing Star Wars or Star Trek aliens where it's like they're basically humanoids with slight differences. They have like spiky ears and their skin is purple.
These are the aliens who, when they saw the invaders coming, they all simultaneously asked, "Oi, oi, what's all this then?"
he's governor. You what, mate?
Yeah, exactly. So we get just enough of these aliens running around to care about them later. Captain Comet is doing the Superman thing, trying to save everybody from this threat. We get our title drop, Human Resources. What's that about? And we get a couple Green Lanterns who show up. A little insect guy, a little handsome Squidward.
Yeah, that's exactly what he looks like. He does look like handsome Squidward. It's very funny. Another purple skinned guy, but with red hair, who's always doing a pouty mouth.
Mhm.
The little insect guy is my favorite, though, and I'm very sad about what happened. I'm so sad
Lantern
about what
Zax.
happens to him. Poor Zax.
Poor Zax.
They
They report to the Guardians of the Universe, the little diminutive blue-skinned aliens who run the Green Lantern Corps, and they're scared of whatever this is, which establishes that, oh, you better be scared of this new villain, because even the Green Lantern Corps doesn't want to get involved, which is a thing that Jeff Johns will come to rely on a lot in his own Green Lantern run that's going on at exactly this time. Which is like, oh, we don't talk about this sector or whatever, where it's all about addressing the threats that the Green Lantern Corps have been too afraid to tackle. Like, it's too big for us. It's above our pay grade. So here we see Morrison kind of riffing on the same concept that Jeff Johns was teasing out with, like the Atrocitus and Larfleeze.
Yeah. And I think Morrison, something that they're very, very good at is depicting a scale of tragedy that's hard for you to comprehend, like fully. So on the very next page, after you see the Guardians, they talk about, or Captain Comet is narrating about like machinery on a scale that you can't comprehend. And you just see in the sky these blank cubes that crash down onto this planet, killing everything in their wake. And it's obviously just a small slice of what is happening all over this world. And then it transitions into, and there's like bleed over between the two pages. So if you're opening this up, it's like less than half of one page is one big splash. And then there's 5 panels that sort of cross over on top of that. Sort of like the cubes that are invading the space. Again, very Grant Morrison-y, where you see there's just an assembly line where these alien creatures are in hazmat suits, are opening people up and doing something to them. And there's very little detail. Another thing that I will steal from them when I start writing more fiction is like, they just show you things and offer no explanation. Like, we don't really know what's happening here, but it looks fucking awful.
That's something that they're going to build on a lot in Final Crisis, where just everything, they give you just enough in every scene to think about how fucking horrible this all is. Yeah.
But from there, we go to a very different kind of drama, right? We turn the page and we are in Metropolis.
Yeah, now we're in the CW.
Exactly, I was about to say. I've been watching so much Superman and Lois recently that what a great show. What a fantastic show. Just Superman as a dad trying so hard. It's so great. I got to the part. It's got
that Friday Night Lights situation where season 2 is a little hard to get through.
Oh, boo. But the first season's really fucking great.
First season's real good, though.
Oh, man. When I got to the part where one of Clark's sons both joined the football team, so he has to pretend to be really weak while carrying around, like, the Gatorade things. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Also, Lois Lane, of course, had her minivan exploded, which is so wonderful.
I love the tiny Smallville newspaper that has literally 2 employees.
Yes, I love it so much. And like, Lois is always wanting to do huge investigations. I love the monologue she gives to the guy that's obviously evil, the venture capitalist guy.
Morgan Edge.
Where he starts trying to interrupt her and she goes, "Stop talking." And I'm like, that's so real. That's absolutely what I would have said to him.
Yeah. Lois is great.
Lois is fantastic. She's obviously, I've said it again and again, and I'll say it till the end of time. She is my favorite character in the DC universe.
We'll talk about that at the end of this issue.
Yeah, fair enough. I do be loving Lois Lane, though.
It's hard not to. But yeah, we're back with the Infinity Inc., Lex Luthor's Real World Road Rules Superman team.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
But yes, it is exactly that. It's America's next top superhero.
Exactly.
Hosted by Tyra Banks. That would be that would be horrifying. But here, what the setup for the scene is that one of Natasha's teammates, the one that was named Jade, got the hero identity of Jade. She is a little freaked out by one of their fellow teammates that has been going into everybody's room and sniffing around, which is super fucking weird.
Yeah, like they realize that one of their teammates, Everyman, is a shapeshifter who is able to shapeshift into things by ingesting a part of it. His first name is Hannibal, which probably isn't important.
Hannibal, the regular guy.
Hannibal, the regular guy. They're all kind of freaked out by this dude. Natasha is bonding with her boyfriend on the team, Jake, and leaving her uncle on red as he texts her every minute about what he found out a couple weeks ago, that Lex Luthor has the power to turn off these powers whenever he wants, which is upsetting.
Yeah. Yeah, very upsetting, I would say. Number one thing you got to say about that is that it's upsetting. What I really like about this scene in particular is that there is like a lurking horror element, but top of the line, it just is. The color palette is completely different from what we've seen previously. The ways that these characters talk to each other is in the sort of CW pattern of two people having a conversation and a third person joins in. That is such a CW type scene. I've seen so much Gossip Girl. I know how they fucking do this.
Yeah.
And here, but instead of the turn of the scene being, oh, but we know this guy is like cheating on her or whatever, it's revealed after this conversation happens that this third character that's come in that is also hooking up with Natasha, it's revealed Jake was actually Everyman shapeshifting.
Yeah. Who just turned into her boyfriend to make out with her for a second.
Oh my God. Yeah. Disgusting.
Ugh.
And it's still like a CW level of drama, like, oh no. But it is also like, that is the timber, I would say, of a Grant Morrison story beat, where
the art really sells it. Chris Batista in this just world-class creepazoid expression on Everyman's face, like he just got away with taking the last cookie from the cookie jar.
Yes, exactly. He's rubbing his little hands together.
No one will ever know.
Yes, exactly. Oh God, it's really, really, really good.
With that, we go on to day 3. We're still in Metropolis. We're in Centennial Park. We're back with our favorite sad sack, Cassandra Sandsmark.
I have one thing to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think that this scene with Cassandra Sandsmark just standing in front of the statue of Superman and Superboy mourning had anything to do with the Lois Lane plotline in Justice League, where that's the only thing she does?
No, I think it's just that, I think it's just a case of men writing women.
Yeah, look, they tried to think of something for a woman to do, and they were like, well, they'd be really sad if I died.
Yeah, war widows.
Yeah, they do love that fucking Civil War type shit.
Yeah.
And they love thinking about women never moving on after death. Just never, ever.
Yeah, you can just hear Ashokan Farewell play as she looks up.
Exactly. Cassandra Sandsmark, it's realistic because she was so in love with Connor and they only got together. They only had sex the night before he died. And that would fuck me up too. Like, that really would. But I know
Wasn't that literally the plot of Buffy season 1?
Yeah, I mean, well, season 2, but yes.
Okay.
Yes. But it's a lot, you know. The thing about Cassandra Sandsmark is that she's kind of a huge cunt, and like I don't think she would actually be doing this, right? I think that her joining the cult of Connor is more realistic because she's very proactive. She always wants to punch her way through a problem. So her doing this, I hope it's like a representative of a moment of reflection for her, because otherwise I just don't buy it. I feel like she'd be putting the costume on and just trying to punch her way out of having an emotion.
Well, as we'll see later in this scene, she's kind of still in denial. And she gets jump scared out of her reverie by the floating helmet of fate. And here we see Ralph Dibny drinking from a hip flask, offering some kind of weird drink to this presumably underage teen.
I love the way Ralph is written in this scene. Just over it.
Yeah.
He's fucking done. I think this interaction is very well written also. Cassie, again, is a very forthright person. So I think it's the turn where she understands that the promises of the cult, she always knew that the cult was fucked up, but she also understood that it wasn't 100% not real, is very interesting here. And like that's what really convinced her to join, is that she knew that while they were kind of full of shit, they weren't completely full of shit, which in a way, this precedes it by about 20 years, but it reminds me of the Nexium cult.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, had crossover into the DC universe because a couple cast members from Smallville joined it, where it started off as like acting workshops and networking in LA, and then turned into a fucked up cult where people were burning like the leader's initials into their skin.
Oh, man, you don't even know. You haven't started season 2 of Superman and Lois yet.
Oh, boy. Okay, well, I can't wait to see that.
Very much, like, plays into the mythology of the fact that the last live-action Superman show was a front for a cult.
That's so funny. I cannot wait.
The cult leader is literally named Allie.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. You know, the CW, the thing I love about that is if you're doing soap opera, you can just fucking go for it.
I know.
You can be like, no subtext, we're just doing the thing. And that's like not...
Garth Marenghi that shit.
Absolutely. It's not how you want television to be all of the time, but it's refreshing when so many other television shows just pull their punches. I love that. Now,
what I love about this scene is it's Mark Waid reclaiming a little bit of dignity and agency for Ralph, even in the scene where he's apparently drunk off his ass, where we find out that he hasn't really been wandering around aimlessly all this time, but like all that time he was in France, for instance, he was looking into this cult. He was trying to help this poor kid. We find out that Dev M, who was the leader of the cult, was just some guy who was manipulating everybody. He's out there looking out for people, even though he's at the lowest point of his life.
Well, you know, he smelled a mystery, right?
Yeah, exactly. He can't help himself. He's very much here to check on Cassie because he knows she's not okay. And she's like, oh, I'm not in mourning. Superboy's back. He's just calling himself Supernova now. I met him. We talked to each other. He told me to respect his personal space.
I love this little bit. Yeah. The way that his response is written. I see. That's great, Cassie. Thank you. Like, that's the only thing you can say to a teenager in that moment. They're like, oh, that's interesting. I've definitely done that in interviews with people. It's like, wow, interesting. Totally.
that Nathan Fielder thing.
Yes.
Where someone will say the wackest shit anyone has ever said to you. And you just go, wow.
Oh, man. Did I ever tell you this story? I was on the subway on the way back from Brighton Beach, and I sit down, and I'm in those conversation seats that they're about to get rid of. And so I'm facing my husband, and there's seats on his back. And as we're just talking, I had just written a story about the interview that Nathan Fielder's agent was very, very upset about. Or the rehearsal, sorry. And who steps into the subway car but Nathan Fielder and John Wilson?
Oh, no.
And John Wilson sits behind my husband. So I am looking directly over my husband's shoulder, Nathan Fielder. It's a very long subway ride to get back to my apartment from Brighton Beach. It was mortifying. Oh my God.
That's some deer in headlights stuff. So there's only one thing Ralph can do from here, and it's confront the guy who he knows is not Connor Kent. He gets up on a rooftop on the next day in Metropolis at the Daily Planet and tracks this mysterious hooded mystery man down and was like, hey, I'm Ralph goddamn Dibny. I know who you are.
Yeah, I love this scene too. I really, really, really love it, especially just the way that Supernova, just on a craft level, the way that you build anticipation for the audience is like, you don't know who this character is, but one of the other characters does. I love when you just show a reader that like there's information that a character has that they're not sharing with you. It creates a sense of anticipation that's really exciting. Like it really gets you motivated to read what happens next.
One of my favorite things to do when researching for this show is look into the contemporary theories about what was happening. And it's so fun that 31 weeks into this story, people have no idea what
That
Supernova's
rocks.
deal is.
That's so good. I love that.
One of my favorite theories is that he's Snapper Carr, who was kind of the just like beatnik sidekick of the Justice League in the 60s and
I
70s.
remember. Oh my God. People keep trying to bring Snapper Carr back, but he's just like a regular guy. He's like Jimmy Olsen if nothing ever happened to Jimmy Olsen.
Exactly.
The thing that's fun about Jimmy is that stuff is constantly happening
He
to
is
him.
a swagless Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah. You know, that actually totally makes... everyone always wonders in the modern Superman, why do they keep making Jimmy Olsen black? It's because Jimmy Olsen has swag. I'm sorry.
Yes!
He's swagged out. Like, he's constantly surviving things with his friend Superman. It's like if your best friend was LeBron James and you had to hoop all the time. It's like, you know?
So much whack shit happens to Jimmy Olsen on a daily basis that at this point it only makes sense for him to be a black man.
Right? Like, no one else in the world, no other kind of person, he has to just be marginalized in some way, right? Because he's the kind of person that wakes up and is like, here I fucking go again. And like, there's
Snapper
something.
Carr doesn't have to deal with this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Snapper Carr just shows up and is like, boo da boo ba boo ba, like whatever.
So Ralph is like, you gotta tell Cassie that you're not Connor. She's losing her mind. And he basically is like, I would endanger the world if anyone knew what my deal was. So I can't tell anybody. Bye.
Yeah, he flies away. Like, it's very, very... I can see why people think he's Superman because of the Superman style shit, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, in this scene, you can think back to like how much Booster Gold hated this guy, and think, you know, he kind of had a point. This guy's a bit of a jerk.
This guy's really annoying. Like, even when he like completely is found out, he can't turn it off. Like whatever the posturing he's doing is, which I think is maybe the biggest clue as to his real identity.
Yeah.
But once it's all revealed, that will like fall into place. Like, just think, who's the most pretentious blowhard in this cast so far?
Don't give it away.
Okay. I'm trying to keep it secret, but the reveal on this is so fucking good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Just all the kudos to Jeff Johns for pulling this off.
It's amazing. Like, when you can actually surprise an audience, you can see why on shows like Westworld, they got addicted to surprising the audience, even when it didn't make sense. Because when you pull it off and it's satisfying and it makes sense, it is possibly the best feeling in the entire world. To get someone to say, oh my God, I never expected that, it makes you feel really great.
And for it to make sense.
Yes. If we're there not to be like, well, actually, you know,
to think back and be like, oh, all the clues were there if I only picked it up. We go back to this goddamn Renaissance painting of hell.
Wow. That's poetry, my friend.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. I have to say, one thing I really like is the color palette. The skin is light lavender purple. The hair is a beautiful, deep, like, aquamarine blue, and then these costumes are teal, the eyes are yellow. It's like hats off to the colorist on this.
That's Alex Sinclair for you.
Alex Sinclair, you fucking killed it. You absolutely did. And then because it contrasts with the horror in the background, which is all those bright oranges of fire and explosions, it gives you a sense of, it is Renaissance-y. Like, it gives you a sense of intense drama happening on all sides. I love it. But the first two panels are just
only instance
destruction.
Of anyone ever saying Adam Blake will save us.
Wow. I feel like you gotta admire Grant Morrison's dedication to making these older heroes feel very real to a modern audience. You do, because you get the sense, you do really feel that loss when he's not there and not there to save them again. But my favorite thing about this particular scene is the other you see immediately that the other handsome Squidward Green Lantern has died. So the only ones left are the fiance of Infantry Jod, who's a beautiful character. I wish she existed for more than just this one scene. And the little bug Green Lantern.
Aww.
He's in a horrible situation, little guy.
Yeah, they're begging for help from the Guardians, and they're like, nope. We're not dealing with this. You're on your own.
The phraseology here also, I think, will lead into the other depictions of the Guardians being like bureaucratic little pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Where they deny his request for extract. And it says, request denied with honors. It's like, oh, thanks. With honors? Fantastic. I'm going to die here.
All right. It's time, I guess, for us to get into Green Lantern cop discourse.
Yeah.
There is this recurring theme throughout most runs of the Green Lantern where they try to deflect the idea that Green Lanterns are space cops by painting the Guardians as the bad guys, where it's like the cops are just doing their jobs. It's the people who are calling the shots who are the real monsters. They're just following the parameters they've been set out to. They have corrupt masters. And it's something that kind of tries to absolve everybody who works for the Guardians any agency in. It's why every story is about, ultimately becomes about Hal or John or Kyle being like, hey, the Guardians suck, and just kind of ousting them or working out a new deal with them until the next writer just brings them back in the fold again like nothing happened, for them to have the exact same revelation over and over.
Yeah, it is what makes Green Lanterns boring, frankly. Yeah. I really liked, I haven't finished it again, but the N.K. Jemisin series that just takes place, that's just a normal murder mystery, essentially.
Oh,
it's just,
yeah. Far Sector.
Far Sector, right? Because she's too far from the Guardians to get into the politics of it.
I have my problems with Far Sector. Beautiful art, though. Unimpeachable art.
Beautiful art. It's what kept me reading for a long time.
I think it's the best any Green Lantern comics ever looked. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's gorgeous. It is not problem free because they're in this age. It is now difficult to write a story about an intergalactic like sphere of space cops. But what I like about this depiction is that it's really small, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't turn into how did the hero save the day? It's just sort of like, well, space cops are in an imperfect entity and they sacrifice their own just as readily as they sacrifice entire worlds. Where it's just sort of like, I would much rather, instead of resolving that problem, that just remained a consistent problem, right? We don't need Hal or John or whoever to solve it. We just need to accept that this is deeply imperfect and fucked in some ways.
Yeah. And this is how fucked it is. In the very next page, we see Jod again, who has been completely brainwashed by these invaders and just brutally massacres his own fiancée. It's a very, very Final Crisis-ass scene where it's where the just like undying faith in this new villain is pretty much what Morrison will lean on again for Darkseid achieving the anti-life equation and taking over the universe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the kind of misery that they want to depict. Yeah. And this is like a warm-up for it.
Exactly.
It's really good. Yeah.
We see Captain Comet, his skin flayed off his body, just like welded to the hull of a rocket in more pain than any living being has ever been in. And he uses his psychic powers to eject his mind out of his body.
That's what we call Grant Morrison shit.
Yeah.
That could be in the Invisibles, right? Like that's something that could absolutely be in the Filth or something like that. And then the next day, week 31, day 7,
we get our shot.
We get the reveal of what has been haunting these people. As Infantryman Jod was stabbing his fiancée to death, he was screaming or just repeating, believe in her. And that's what everyone on this planet, as they're killing everyone, has been doing, saying, like, believe in her, believe in her, believe in her. And then we get to finally see her. And it is, if you took the xenomorph from Alien and gave it a lady's face.
Yeah.
That's what it is. She pops
a Green Lantern ring into her mouth like an M&M. And we see our space heroes looking on the last page. And Lobo does his best impression of a Saturday Night Live guest host. It goes, ladies and gentlemen, Lady Styx. This
reveal is so good.
Yeah.
It's literally so good, and it won't get better than this.
No. This is the only time Lady Styx ever hits.
Yeah. And it's a part of it is that you can't know anything more about her for her to be threatening. This is the most threatening she'll ever seem. I don't want to see her speak. I don't want to see her know more about her philosophy. I just want her to exist as this like incomprehensible level of terror. And if you reveal any of the things that are like any of those questions get answered, it's like a Twin Peaks problem. The answers are less interesting than the questions.
Yeah, I mean, Grant Morrison literally did the same thing on Seven Soldiers of Victory. This is the concept behind the Sheeta.
Yes. And the Sheeta are more interesting because they don't actually resolve all of those questions.
Yeah.
The closest they get to it is in depicting Camelot, the fall of Camelot, as being like a part of the Sheeta's plan. And that, again, it's more questions rather than answers. You're literally wearing a question shirt, Alex Jaffe. So you know what I'm fucking talking about, right?
I understand.
So the journey of discovery is often more interesting than actually solving the question itself, which is also the thematic core of the Question Renee Montoya storyline in 52.
Which we'll get back to next week, and I'm excited for it. But
hell yeah.
Right now, we got to get into our backup. This is the origin of Robin, your favorite Robin. It's Tim Drake.
It's my boy. I love this little piece of shit so much.
The art here is Freddie E. Williams, whose style is it gets a little goopy for me sometimes, but I think I like his work best on the really surprisingly good Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossovers that he did with James Tynion in the 2010s.
Oh, yeah.
Just a really good time there. It's where this is where I watched my parents die Raphael meme comes from.
I mean, the reason why that meme works so well is because the art is so serious.
Yeah. So, this is the story of the third Robin, the one who figures out Batman's identity and shows up at the worst part of his life to try and turn it around because Batman needs a Robin or he'll descend into the miserable grittiness of Frank Miller's Dark Knight. What I want to know is why you love Tim Drake so much.
One, because he's a smart little asshole, right?
Okay.
He is probably someone who got his head dunked in a toilet at school, you know,
True.
like for being a little annoying nerd.
The only Robin to experience a swirly. I think that's right.
I think that's actually true. No one would dare do it to Damian. Jason Todd would be doing that to others, and Dick fucks. So that's not happening to him.
Right.
But Tim, he just sat down one day and like approached Batman like fandom, essentially. He was like, I could probably figure out who he is, and then did it. And then also was like, and I also know what your whole fucking problem is, by the way. Narratively, I've discovered this, and I'm the one that can solve all the problems. He is like the ultimate fans. Like he's the dream of a fan of Batman, is to be like, hey, I can make this better for you. I promise I know how to help you. And to watch then Batman accept that into his life is really, really satisfying as like a fan, as someone who's always dreamed of being a part of the Bat family. And that's why I think it sucks that his parents were killed in Identity Crisis. I think that's kind of bullshit. Because part of the thing that makes Tim so unique and so valuable in the Bat family is that he's really just regular, but driven to do good things because he feels it's a calling. To that end, I think the only thing missing from this 2-pager is you have to see him hack the Batcave. That's the other thing that I think is so wonderful about him, is that he hacked the Batcave and then like left a mystery for Batman to solve.
You raise a really good point that all the way back in 1940, the reason that the role of Robin was created was to be an audience surrogate for young readers who couldn't identify with Batman. And if you're going to reinvent Robin, what I suppose didn't work with Jason Todd, as much as I love him, is that he wasn't reflective of the people who were reading Batman at the time. And other than Dick Grayson, who was all about like, oh, I'm fantasizing about going on great adventures with my friend Batman, Tim Drake is the only Robin who has ever really channeled the idea of like being in a place where the reader themselves find themselves reading these books.
Yeah. It really gets into the heart of why readers like having a Robin, which is Batman needs to play against somebody, and that somebody should probably have a lighter personality than Bruce Wayne himself, who is a man consumed by his own trauma.
I do want to say the other relatable Robin is probably Stephanie Brown.
Yes.
Her whole attitude of nobody gave me permission to do this, but I don't care.
Yeah, that's, I think, and that's why they dated for a little bit, right? Because they are so similar as characters, you can see how they fit together.
Yes.
I think it's honestly more character accurate that Tim Drake is a shitty bisexual. Also because Steph is obviously in love with Cass, but whatever. We don't have to get into that.
we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. But Tim, like, I do like this era. They felt very of the time, like especially because that was around the time that I started reading comics also. So there's a little bit of nostalgia to put in there. But those two characters just being like, they're very millennial coded in that they're people who are like, I'm going to change the world. And like, they don't ask permission for that. They just try to go out and do it. And of course, they learn the folly of saying, I'm going to change the world and having no plan. But it is, to me, what I was interested in about these sort of young characters that take up the legacy roles in Batman comics is they are not they are not called by a mystical force. They feel like they have to rise to the occasion, even if they're like shitty little nerds or people who are the child of a drug lord or whatever.
Yeah. Tim Drake is not a character I ever really got till I read James Tynion's Detective Comics series, which explored his role in the larger Bat family, despite being off the board for most of it. And it finally clicked a lot of things into place here. It's like, oh, he's the one who looks at like the infrastructure of Gotham City. He's like, let's solve these problems. He
approaches everything like a nerd, like a detective, right? There are like the Robins that exist to me represent all of the different parts of Batman that he can pass down to a child, right?
Yeah.
There is the bravado element in Dick. And then in Jason, there is like the danger and the fear. And in Damian, it's literally genetic legacy.
Yeah.
But with Tim, it's detective work. And so that's why I always like it when he shows up, because it means the story will have to, in some way, involve detective work.
Yeah. And I think what's brilliant about Brian Q. Miller is that he recognized that, like, as much as fans rightfully claim Stephanie Brown's legacy as one of the Robins, spiritually, she has always been closer to a Batgirl.
Yeah.
In that the Batgirls, going back to Barbara Gordon, don't operate under Batman's permission structure.
Yeah.
It's a legacy of its own.
Seeing her in the Robin costume felt good because fans really wanted it, but she's so much closer to Cass when it comes to how the family operated.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
She's not I say all the time, Cass and Steph aren't Waynes, they're Gordons.
Yeah, that's very, very true. They're there to point out Batman's folly. If that's how he's got to have all these little different elements in order to stay sane. It's the which is, you could go to therapy, my guy. That would be a lot cheaper than what you're doing. But I guess if you're a billionaire, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, your dad's friend Leslie Tompkins, who runs a health clinic, is not a therapist. Stop going to her.
Leslie Tompkins just like, oh, fuck, here comes Bruce to just trauma dump on me and then walk away.
I don't know if you've read Batman the Imposter by Matt Tomlinson.
No.
Who's the co-writer of the Batman 2.
Fuck.
Really good comic where Batman literally just crashes into Leslie Tompkins' office to trauma dump on her. It's so good.
It's so funny because you know that he's doing that to all of his friends in real life too. As Bruce Wayne, he'll sit down with like his billionaire playboy friends and then make up a story that sounds a little bit similar to the problems he's having dating Catwoman. And then with the second he gets up to go to the bathroom, be like, this guy's a fucking drag, man. I don't know why we invite him out anywhere anymore.
Batman the Imposter, not canon at all to the Matt Reeves Batman, but it's very much Robert Pattinson Batman. So if you want to see that kind of Batman in comics,
I do love Robert Pattinson as Batman. I love it because you can see the version of him that's going to become billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne in the way that the Christian Bale Batman just sort of never really pulled off. There's no difference between Christian Bale as Batman and Christian Bale as Bruce in those movies. But in our Pats, you can absolutely see him becoming like a guy who's on the cover of tabloids for dating a bunch of models.
Absolutely.
But right now, he is like a shitty little rat in the rain listening to Nirvana on loop.
Do you think the second movie's going to have another Nirvana song, or are they going to do a different artist?
Oh, man. I mean, if they go for another Nirvana song, In Bloom is probably the one they should pick because it's goes from dourness to confidence, which I hope is the arc that they're trying to get here.
Yeah.
But if they're going to do a different artist, let's limit it to 90s artists. What other sort of artists would be emblematic of the struggle that Bruce Wayne goes? There's a lot to pick from. It would be fascinating if they picked a whole song from Courtney Love Band. Soundgarden would be really, really good too. Chris Cornell has that sort of blues singer misery in his voice. Yeah. That would be really, really great. I would love if it was like Doll Parts by Hole.
Oh, that's good.
That would be really, really good.
All right. What was your favorite scene in this issue?
So you picked my favorite scene, actually. So I'm going to go with my second favorite, which is the Infinity Ink scene, because it's so, so funny.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. Just like it's a needed moment of levity in this issue, which is pretty dour overall. But then it has that nasty little twist at the end that just makes me cackle. Yeah, I love it.
Little goblin everyman.
Oh, God, I love him. I mean, I hate him, but I love him.
I was sure you were going to talk more about the Morrison stuff, but
I like it a lot. But part of the problem with it that keeps it from being my favorite is that this overall storyline is not very good.
It's not good.
It's just not. And this is like the best it'll ever get. And that is like bittersweet for me. Whereas the Everyman stuff actually is pretty good all the way through.
Mine is Ralph Dibny confronting Supernova on the roof of the Daily Planet.
It's just classic Dibny stuff. It's just fucking great.
It's Mark Waid dropping the weights. He's finally able to flex a little bit with this character he clearly cares so much about. We're past the halfway point. It's time for Ralph to start shining and showing he's not everybody's fool. He's not just a sad sack.
Yes.
He's
and
the world's greatest detective.
He is the world's greatest detective. I love... Here's two things that I really like, that characters that have been revitalized by projects that are completely not actually related to them. They're not the center of them. Ralph Dibny getting revitalized by this comic. And then also Mr. Terrific getting revitalized by Tom King's Adam Strange, where he's like a side character and it's not really about him. But suddenly people were like, oh, Mr. Terrific is fucking cool. And it's like, yeah, he's been fucking cool.
Suddenly they remember all the work Jeff Johns did with him for 10 years.
I'm really happy to see Eddie Gathegi in the new Superman movie because he's so fucking good as a similar smartest man in the world type character in For All Mankind. And I just think he's going to knock it the fuck out of the park. And the weird T-shaped mask actually looks really good.
I mean, I have some thoughts about that, like him just kind of doing that same kind of tired, neutral leader expression that we see Amanda Waller doing every time Amanda Waller shows up in a James Gunn thing.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. We gotta give him more black characters. And then maybe the black characters will be different from each other.
Maybe.
Maybe, who knows?
We'll see. What do you want to put on the Blackboard this week?
My little bug friend.
Oh, Zax.
Zax, I miss you. I'll miss you forever. I just want to know everything he got up to and what his planet is like and all of his friends. Does he have a little bug wife?
Do you know about the Green Lantern Bzzd, who is like
I do know about Bzzd. I do love Bzzd.
Yeah. So there is a fly Green Lantern out there whose partner is literally Mogo, the living planet.
That rocks.
Don't you love it when one guy's really big and one guy's really small?
I do love it when one guy's really big and one guy's really small. It's one of my favorite things ever.
I want to talk about how the one thing that Jeff Johns is better at than Grant Morrison is apparently making space villains in DC Comics.
The space villain in this comic is a big cube. Yeah. And then the humanoid representative of it is just the xenomorph, but a sexy lady.
Yeah.
Come on, Grant. Come on.
You can do better than that. I know you can do better than that. Jeff gave us characters that we're still using to this day. He gave us Larfleeze, who everybody loves. He's Space Grover. He gave us Atrocitus, who was used to great effect in the very underrated Green Lantern, the animated series. I mean, we make fun of Jeff Johns for having the sort of pattern of taking a thing and multiplying it by 7. But with the Lantern stuff, it really worked. He helped flesh out a universe that had a lot of empty space. Like, you can understand the impetus behind 52, that like we don't really have any good space villains other than Darkseid. We got to come up with some other angles. I don't think the answer was, what if we made Darkseid again but a lady?
Yeah. I think the Sheeta are interesting because they tie into stuff about the Fae that comes from other sources of mythology that fits that story very specifically well. But it's clear to me that Grant is stuck in that mode and is not really interested in exploring what other ways an incomprehensible horror from space could be like.
Yeah, it almost feels like Morrison's mind is elsewhere while they're working on 52.
Yeah, it almost feels like they're really kind of treading their wheels on a personal project while they're working on 52.
All right. You want to go to the mailbag?
Yeah, I love the mailbag. Let's mailbag it up.
Okay, this is Asking the Questions, where our listeners to 52 Pickup can submit their own questions for us to answer by sending an email to 52mailbag@gmail.com. This week's question comes from Brian S. Wandering through the graphic novels section in the large downtown library, shout out Chicago Public Library, Harold Washington Branch, I picked up the Watchmen Companion. I thought it was going to be similar to your show, going through every issue panel by panel. It wasn't exactly that, but it did have extended pieces of side information, like full sections from Under the Hood and Dr. Malcolm's notes, etc. It was more of a character background for what was in the first half of the book, although it did contain the question number 17. That's the issue where the question reads Watchmen, and it's like, this Rorschach guy's kind of cool. And then he realizes by the end of the issue, actually, this guy sucks. It's pretty good.
That's pretty funny.
It did have the DC Heroes role-playing module book, Watchmen, Who Watches the Watchmen, by Dan Greenberg, and Watchmen Taking Out the Trash by Ray Winnegar, with consultation from Alan Moore. Very comparable to D&D, obviously. It seems as though this companion didn't have the actual instructions. Do you know / have you seen where I can find this? Have you played any DC Heroes tabletop RPGs? Any other Watchmen content I can dig into other than Doomsday Clock and HBO Watchmen? Thanks a lot. I enjoy the show. What are your thoughts on like DC role playing? Do you have any? Do you know anything about this world?
I have looked at some of the rule books, but I haven't had a chance to play any of these games because I can never find a consistent table for any of the games I want to play.
Yeah.
I've looked at this and I've been interested in it, but the only way I can find a real rule book, it's like they're only on eBay for exorbitant sums, essentially.
I have excellent news for you.
Yes.
The DC Heroes role-playing game is being reissued for its 40th anniversary by Cryptozoic.
Oh, fascinating.
So this is a very well-timed question because that's about to happen. And all of the modules like the Watchmen sourcebook and all the other stuff are coming out alongside it. So you'll be able to find that pretty soon. My favorite thing about the DC Heroes game, which I never played, but again, I have looked at, was an atlas that DC put out as a companion piece to this in 1990, which to this day is the canonical source for where the cities that are made up for the DC universe are in the Earth of DC. It's how we know Metropolis is in Delaware. It's how we know that Central City is in Missouri. Like if you want specific geographical information, like you're plotting where everything is in a DC story, nothing like the DC Atlas from 1990 has ever been published. There was a later role-playing game from the makers of Mutants and Masterminds called DC Adventures that came out in the 2010s that I played a lot of.
Yeah?
And I ran a little campaign. I participated in a little campaign. Obviously, anytime I played as the question because I'm that bitch. And I just had a real good time failing at shit.
That's great. I love failure in these kinds of games. I've been watching a lot of Dimension 20 recently, and they have these little podcasts they do like about that where people that participate in these games talk about role playing as a sort of improv framework. One thing Sam Reich said about difference between like as a story beat getting a nat 1 or a nat 20. A nat 1 is always going to be more interesting because failure is always more interesting narratively.
Yeah.
How do you work yourself back out of a hole is just a more interesting problem than you succeed.
Yeah, I listened to this actual play podcast where anytime they roll a 10, they're like, the least interesting roll. What do I do with this?
Yeah, exactly. Completely even. Doesn't make any sense. This is what kind of why I want to play die sometimes, because it seems like every roll is a fucking nail biter.
Yeah. I mean, what made the question so fun to play in the years I played him is that he's one of the few DC characters who is designed to eat shit all the time.
Yes, that rocks.
Like, if he's the world's greatest detective, you're playing him wrong. He follows these insane theories to blind alleys. And it's like, well, better start again.
As we've established, he's a galer. You
know?
Yeah,
he's a galer.
Yeah. He believes things that are simply not true because the conspiracy is so delicious.
Yes. The dots, I've connected them. You haven't connected shit, Victor.
Oh my God. He would love Taylor Swift so much.
All right.
He really would. But any other Watchmen content I can dig into, honestly, I think the best answer to that question is to look to the responses to Watchmen other comic writers have written. I was specifically thinking of, what is it called? Like Peter 13 or something like that.
Peter Cannon Thunderbolt by Kieran Gillen.
Yes, sorry. I was mixing that up with another thing, but that had the number 13 in it. But Peter Cannon Thunderbolt, stuff like that. Because the Watchmen created ripples, and it was begging to be responded to by other writers. And Alan Moore didn't get the response he wanted to, I think, until quite recently.
I think it's time to explain how DC screwed over Alan Moore.
Let's have this chat. Let's just get into it, please.
Let's just get into it. So back in the 1980s, DC had just acquired all of these characters from the defunct Charlton Comics, which had its own stable of lesser superheroes, like The Question, like Blue Beetle, like Captain Atom, like Peacemaker, like Nightshade. And they were incorporating these characters into the DC universe with the help of Crisis on Infinite Earths as part of this restructure. And they're trying to figure out how to incorporate these characters in a way that would resonate with people. And Alan Moore prepared this big pitch about this like really dark superhero story about how people would react to heroes if they actually existed. And Alan Moore's editor was like, I love this, but if we do this, we can literally never use these characters again. Can you make your own characters? And we'll publish that as an original story. And Alan Moore is like, I'd love to do that, but I would also like to own it if they're my characters. So he made a deal with DC that he and Dave Gibbons would get to hold on to the rights of Watchmen the moment DC stopped printing it. That they would have this first run with DC, and when DC was done, the rights would go back to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons to do whatever they wanted with. But as it turns out, Watchmen was one of the biggest comics that had ever been released in history. And DC was like, what if we never stopped publishing this? And the reason you can always find a fresh edition of Watchmen on the shelf is that the moment they stop publishing it, Alan Moore gets the rights back. And it's the animosity over this just weaselly decision of like reprinting comics, which simply was not done at the time, despite it being par for the course now, which drove the wedge between Alan Moore and DC, which he had just genuinely loved so much for so many years.
You don't write Watchmen if you don't love DC on some level. Yeah, like that's what's so heartbreaking about this is Watchmen, it deconstructs these heroic archetypes because at the end, it wants to give an opportunity for others to rebuild them. You can see that in the ways that characters have changed and the ways that some of them still choose to be superheroes even after learning everything they've learned. It's about human misery, but also the perseverance of goodness despite that. And to me, that's really strongly expressed in the story between the newspaper salesman and the little comics kid. It's just like, humanity is beautiful. Even though it's ugly, humanity is beautiful. And unfortunately, Watchmen becomes emblematic of humanity's ugliness because of how DC treated Alan Moore. It's to the point where you pick up the new novel he's written, Alan Moore, and in the back, it'll mention his other landmark comics, like From Hell, and like other things that are even published by DC even, but not Watchmen. Watchmen broke his heart. Like, it sucks.
Yeah. Jack Kirby was right. Comics will break your heart. As for other Watchmen content, something I'm surprised to stand up for, but I actually will, is Tom King's Rorschach book, which I expected to be just absolutely vile.
And you're a Tom King hater most of the time. So
yeah, but Rorschach really hits because it's not really a Watchmen comic. It's actually about Steve Ditko in this really interesting way.
Oh, fuck. Okay, I have to finish it now. I read the first issue and then I was like, I feel weird about this.
No.
But with that recommendation, I will load it up on my new tablet. I popped myself to read comics.
Yeah, Frank Miller shows up in this comic as a character in the comic.
Oh, fuck yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tom King, when Tom King is on his shit, sometimes it hits. You know what I mean? Like, I was talking to Angelica J. Bastian about this on Blue Sky. And, like, even though there's some Tom King works I've soured on and I've never liked his stuff for Batman, the Vision is still good. The Vision is still good. I still really like it. Go ahead.
I'm going to shout out another comic book podcast I've been listening to recently called The Black Case Book, which you would love.
I should listen to that. I follow them on Blue Sky.
Yeah. They did this incredible episode about Tom King's Batman run, which just really dissects it in a way that just gets to every problem that people have with it and why it is what it is.
I have to listen to it because on the one hand, it's like a deranged shipper. Every time he writes a really good scene between Selena and Bruce, I'm like, hooray! But then I try to read the comic like from beginning to end and I'm like, this is dog shit. This is really bad.
Yeah. Obviously a huge Morrison head, which is where we disagree the most. But just some really, really cogent and insightful Batman theorizing that gets to why Batman is great and why I
gotta listen to this. I fucking love Batman.
I'm okay on Batman.
Batman was I'm a child of the Tim Burton movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember the one time I was losing a tooth. I had a wiggly tooth and my brother could see it was really bothering me. So he knew where mom had hid the Christmas presents, and when one of them was a Batman Joker playset that he wanted to play with me. So he dug it out and opened it up.
Aw, that's so
a really
nice.
Sweet brother moment. But like, this is like my connection to Batman is from my childhood. Like, I watched the animated series. I watched the Tim Burton movies. I would beg to go to McDonald's for the Happy Meal toy. I subscribed to Nickelodeon magazine because they had a spread on the making of the new Batman movie. Batman is a big part of my heart. Like, it's just, I'm also like a person that's dealt with death and trauma in my life. And Batman has got something I've returned to over and over and over again as like, how do you live through feeling like dog shit every single day of your life? Well, Batman does it.
My main problem with Batman is the same reason I love 52. There's too much of him. There's all these other cool guys that he's in the way of.
It is frustrating, right? Even as a Batman fan.
Yeah.
But the first DC hero they'll always try to do when they're revitalizing their movies is Batman. And I would love for them to do something else. You know, I would love, and if they're going to do Batman, why are we always doing the Joker? Can we do something else? Can we do something else that's interesting about Batman? There's so many interesting things about Batman, not just the Joker.
I mean, Lemmy Kilmister told us, don't forget the Joker. Gita.
Oh, I knew talking to you would make me have a good day.
It's always a good day with you.
Sincerely.
What a joy it is to talk about comics, and we'll be doing it again for at least 20 more episodes.
We got the entire rest of this calendar year to get through it. And
that would be nice.
And then we'll see what happens. We got some ideas. But we'll have to talk a little bit more down the line.
Yeah.
But one big thing I want to say before the end of the show is if you love this show, please tell a friend about it. Word of mouth really does a lot for us. We don't do much advertising, so we'd love that. Also, leave us a review on wherever you listen to podcasts, thumbs up, 5 stars. And if you write something funny, I will read it on air. It just has to make me personally laugh. Try, please.
You know what? I'll read a review.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is one we got from Goose Owen, who says, comics are fun, turns out. This podcast basically introduced me to the wonderful world of comics, and what a way to be introduced. It is delightful to learn so much from these two and their guests about comics and related art, and to hear their well-informed and deeply personal perspectives. I stayed reading the chapters along with them until I broke and read the rest of them in one sitting.
Got 'em.
My new boon, or curse, is having nigh infinite comics I need to check out now. Thank you both. And all I can say to that is, got him!
Motherfucking got him!
We fucking got you! Oh, you're addicted to comics now.
Sorry.
Oh, did someone get addicted to comics? Did someone get addicted to comics?
You're in hell with us now. We did it to you. We did it to you.
I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. All right. Gita, before we sign off, you have anything you want to ask me?
Yeah, really quick question. It won't take any of your time. Are you ready?
Sure.
That was really good. "52 Pickup" is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim with original music by John Aaron. Hosting for 52 Pickup is provided by Insert Credit. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.